What's going on, all you MMA fans out there? Your two favorite wild uncles are back tonight. That's my good mate over there, Logan Myers. And I'm Uncle Henry. And we are talking about the film that has been the talk of the town since it came out. It didn't have a great box office, but everybody's been talking about this film because mainly Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson coming in and playing a character, putting on the prosthetics to make him look like this, real MMA fighter, talking, dealing with his life and the story of mixed martial arts and UFC champion Mark Kerr. That's right. He was one of the OG UFC fighters, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stepping into his role, and Dawn, his girlfriend, played by Emily Blunt. And this one was directed by Benny Safdie of the Safdie brothers. What movie are we talking about, Logan?
The Smash Machine.
What happens next? It's simple. Am I going to hurt him?
Let's fucking go.
Before he hurts me?
Ready?
I think so.
You think so? Come on, Mark. Yes or no answer. Come on. Are you ready?
Yes.
Marquito is back.
And that's exactly what I thought this movie was going to be like off the rope, top rope, like it's wrestling in your face, but and it's really not. It's like a slow drama and not what I was expecting. But, The Rock in this movie playing Mark Kerr, this legend. And this takes place in 1997 to 2000, I believe it was. But, The Rock, unrecognizable. It looks like John Favreau, jacked up. Like he has like facial prosthetics on, like the curly hair and stuff that looked like Mark Kerr back then. So unrecognizable, and really does a great job in this movie, which is weird for me to say that The Rock was good in a movie, because his movies are always, one-dimensional character that's always the same. But this, he actually put feel like his time and heart into, following this character of Mark Kerr, the OG, the GOAT, the legend here. And you see his life and what he goes through in the span of a few years.
Yeah, it really was. This was, when the UFC was first coming up, not anything like it, it's become today. And before the fighters, were household names like they are now. That's like you didn't know who Mark Kerr was before this. And, a lot of UFC fans wouldn't even know that, especially ones that weren't with it from the beginning. I knew of him, of course, because I've been watching since the beginning, so I was familiar with them. But this movie definitely highlights what he went through, coming from the Olympics, where he was an, Olympic wrestler, and trying to make his way into the mixed martial arts. And that was when it was first starting out. The rules were a lot different back then. They could get away with, even crazier things back then. There was rampant steroid use. Of course, there was injuries, and it was kind of the wild, wild west. And that's kind of what it turned in for Mark. He had some aches and pains, and, let's take some pain medication, let's take some steroids. Let's get back in there, instead of having to rest and recoup. Nope, he was all moving forward with the singular goal of becoming the UFC champion. And, you get that a lot in this movie, but this one really is, just kind of a study of the man, known as Mark Kerr, not only when he's training, but also just regular life. What was it like for him and his relationship with Dawn there, highly volatile relationship, two people that definitely love each other, but are basically also, like fire and gasoline when you get them together, and it all comes to a boiling point. And I loved watching those two on screen. They had a couple scenes there that were definitely stood out for me. And, I could see both of those actors being nominated for awards just for those couple scenes there alone together when they were arguing and, pouring their hearts out to each other of what matters. And, kind of those scenes really stood out. The authenticity is something that I noticed too. Watching those early UFCs, the production when he came out in the beginning, it looked like how it did back in the day, the smoke and the lights and, the small little arenas and, casinos that they had these fights on. And they did a really great job. Benny Safdie, really an eye for authenticity in this. And it really felt authentic, putting actual MMA fighters in there. Mark Coleman, who you see right above your head there on the other side of Mark, played by an actual fighter, Ryan Bader, and then Boss Rutan as the old trainer, who too was a real person. So bringing those guys over lends to the authenticity, and it also, feels real when they have the fight scenes too. It doesn't feel like other sports movies where telegraphed punching. That's how it is. It's real fighting, and that really translated on the screen, I thought too. So really, a really intimate look on Mark Kerr, and it takes you through all the trials and tribulations and makes you feel for the guy and understand what he went through as a fighter, and to see where he ended up. I love that scene at the end when it shows, here he is today. He's just like me and you. He's just a guy, hardworking guy who put his soul into his passion, and it paid off in some ways. In other ways, it didn't work out quite like he expected. And he was a champion before champions were known. So he's still kind of unknown, but this movie definitely highlights him and gives him the respect that he deserves.
Crazy to see like how much it's changed in 30 years. It's, I'm used to it being at the MGM. They're getting millions of dollars when they win a fight. Back then, I think he got $3,000, I think it was, for a fight, like
Hmm.
nothing. No
Nothing.
wonder it was like, people were struggling because it wasn't that popular back then, where it wasn't making
No.
as much money. It's crazy. These days, millions and millions of dollars. So changed the game, 30 years later, cash cow, everybody's watching. It makes a lot of money. But back in the day, people like Mark Kerr struggled just to pay their bills and the day-to-day stuff. And it shows the human side of Mark Kerr more at home, with, like you're saying, Emily Blunt's character, them getting into fights, especially when they were partying, throwing glasses at each other, cops showing
Yeah.
up, like some really bad stuff, but it had that more human aspect of it. Like things not aren't always great. Like this character at home, behind the scenes, and the stuff he's dealing with, training and these fights and things like that, and his crew behind me, working with him, trying to get him to where he needs to be, overcome all these hurdles. But really compelling story, great directing. Benny Safdie, big fan of his. Both him and his brother, their movies, but doing the solo writing and directing, did a great job. The script here, authenticity of the sport, back 97. Rock, impressed with his character, impressed with his acting in this movie, truly. I like to see more of this from The Rock instead of the quirky, remakes of Disney movies and action movies. I thought this was really fantastic, showing his acting chops, and was really blown away by that. The only nitpick about this movie, a little too slow for me. I thought there was going to be a lot more fighting and action, and definitely not the case here. But
Mhm.
not terrible thing. And I enjoyed watching this, and definitely check it out. So with that being said, I'm gonna give the Smashing Machine. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Marker hair pieces.
And I am going to give The Smashing Machine, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 Emily Blunt hair pieces.
So I want to hear from all you wild UFC enthusiasts out there. What did you like about the Smashing Machine? What didn't you like about it? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, check out these wild UFC enthusiasts on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and our website, Cinephellas.com, for the latest, greatest TV, movie news, and reviews.
Yeah, we were talking about how much they made back then and how much and how far the sport's grown. Just signed a deal with Paramount that like changes it even more. Like
Yep.
hard to believe that it's going to keep growing here, but basically they're getting rid of the pay-per-view model. So, no, gone are the days of, having to shell out, you know, it used to be like 50, $60. It's grown to be like 70, 80, $90 a pay-per-view. Well, that gets rid of it. You just have to have a Paramount Plus subscription. You get every event,
Dang.
you don't have to pay any extra. So that's going to bring more eyeballs. And, they're supposed to do a big event at the White House for like the whatever 4th of July. I don't know. It's some big uh, anniversary or whatever. So they're supposed to have a fight like on the White House grounds. So that's going to be huge. The first one in January, Paddy Pimblett's fighting. He's
Nice.
he's like one of the young, like popular, seems like somebody that would go in there and just be obnoxious and not know how to fight, but this guy actually does. So bringing over a personality like that, and yeah, the sports still has room to grow, believe it or not. So, but yeah, this was cool going back to the early days. back in the nitty gritty. And yeah, just seeing Dwayne inhabit this role and play Mark Kerr here, and thought everybody did a great job. And yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it too, mate. I know you weren't as big of an UFC fan, but I knew that you'd appreciate the story and the acting and everything. So that's cool. Glad you dug it. Benny's got some talent, and not only
Does
did he act this year, he was in Happy Gilmore too, but also directing this movie. Very cool. Yeah, he's definitely has the chops. He's a good director.
I wonder if he really has bad breath. Like, then
Probably.
I'm like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that wraps it up for this review for Cinephellas. I'm Logan Myers. It's my good mate Henry Hill over there. Signing out till next time. Cheese!
Cheese.